Welcome to the Intern Whisperer, our show all about the future of work and innovation and, of course, internships. So today's guest is Anthony Hernandez. He's the founder and CEO of AMCOR Media. And before we start, let's kick off our show with our Intern Whisperer tip of the week for employers. Be sure to coordinate with your interns at the beginning when they start with you and you're onboarding them about how to dress, including Zoom calls. And on site, if your business is open to the public. So do you have casual Fridays? Do you want them to dress a certain way? How should they dress when meeting with your clients or your customers if you're inviting them into that environment? Remember, they're students, they're used to wearing, student clothing. So you've got to guide them and mentor them in that area. Tony, welcome to the Intern Whisperer.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited to have you. Yes. So Axel, go ahead, kick us off.
Hello. So here is our first question. So what is your educational background and work history?
So I have a long work history. Educational background was short. I actually have an associate's degree in something completely different from the field of work that I've magnified in. I have a 2-year degree as a paralegal.
I don't think that's any different, Tony. I think that being in law is the most important thing you can have in media.
Well, it's interesting because over my, throughout my career, that knowledge of negotiating and contracts and things like that became extremely useful actually in what I do.
Yeah, you're protecting all type of intellectual property. So
yes.
I think that was the best degree ever for what it is that you do.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started off, actually, I've been in media my whole life. I'm second generation. My dad and my mom were in media. So I usually tell people that I've been in media since I was in diapers. And literally, as far as I can remember, I remember sitting as a guest, in television shows as a child, 4 years old.
Oh, your parents were in, I guess, the entertainment industry? Or?
Yes, yeah. So my parents were in all facets of media. So they did television and radio and print, public relations, advertising. So
Here in the United States?
In the United States and in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm from Puerto Rico.
Awesome. I'm half Puerto Rican, so I'm half as good as you are, I think. So my career started very early. I did, start as a driver for an advertising agency when I was 18 years old. And that was interesting because I got to see a lot of interesting things, both on the creative side and on the sales side. Since I grew up around a lot of the creative side, I sort of had that background and that foundation, but I had never really ventured into the sales side and marketing side. And so I was looking at, these guys walking in with their suits and ties and very successful, and they had the best cars, and I'm like, I need to look into getting into the sales side of things. So that kind of stuck with me. Beyond that, I did some volunteer work for 2 years out of the country. I was in Mexico for a while. And then when I came back to the US, I started in school. Like I said, I pursued a degree in legal studies only because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And so I began the paralegal side so I can start interning with law firms, but it didn't pan out that way. Fate would have something else for me. When I came back from being out of the country, because I had been working in counseling people and mentoring people, even at a young age, I was recruited by a mental health firm to help counsel at-risk young adults. And so I spent about 3 years doing that, anywhere from substance abuse to depression counseling and so on and so forth. Even though I didn't have a degree in psychology, I did have the skill sets, and I worked under the auspices of a clinical psychologist in that facility.
I'm going to jump in here because I think that particular experience and background is really helpful during everything we went through this past year with COVID. But I would also think that it's really valuable with people in the entertainment industry because I think that they may struggle with maybe imposter syndrome, all kinds of things.
Yes.
I think I read that comedians are the ones that have the highest suicide rate.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. They tend to project their dysfunctional life as humor to the audience, and they use that as their fuel. So yeah, we have a lot of major entertainers like Robin Williams and things like that. That people like that
Yeah.
lives to depression. So. But yeah, so I did that and had an opportunity to start working with my dad. He was running a print company at the time, and they were printing a national magazine that was distributed in NASCAR races and Formula One races. And so I actually started helping out on the creative side. So I was doing layout work and things like that, and artwork for the magazine, and that was a really good experience. There was an opportunity.
I'm going to ask another question.
Yeah.
NASCAR, did you ever drive one?
No, but I'd love to. That's my.
I would love to drive one.
It's on my bucket list.
I have way too many tickets to prove that I wanted to be.
But you can go out to Disney and
Yeah.
you can go and drive there. They'll let you do it
Yeah.
on a real racetrack. And I think they let you do it even over at Daytona, right?
Yeah, there's some tracks I'm familiar with. I actually have a relative that does race as a hobby, so I'm gonna have to hitch with them and see what we can do
I
there.
think that would be such fun to be in the pit with them
Yeah.
also. So like, I don't know, get some pictures of those.
There
I
you
want to
go.
see
Yeah,
those.
Would be nice.
Yeah, so for me, it was sort of a progressive, step-by-step process in media, and sort of carving my own way, even though I grew up around it and I was very familiar with it. I grew up around a lot of celebrities. As a child, I would spend my summer vacations in a television studio where they were videotaping telenovelas, the Spanish soap operas. And that was a lot of fun, and I got to see everything, the BTS, behind the scenes, and see these actors as real people, and a lot of them were very, very nice to me. I was like 10 or 11 years old at the time, and it was really fun. But fast forward, as I was working in this particular print shop with this national publication, one of my dad's colleagues came up to us and said, there's a niche here to start a newspaper in the area. Would you like to be, since you have writing skills and everything else, would you like to be part of the publishing team? I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to. And so we launched something called the Suncoast Post, and it was in the west coast of Florida, and lasted for several years. I debuted from the bottom and worked my way up, did a little bit of everything, and that's sort of my foray into advertising sales as well. And I was actually in the middle of doing a deal. We were doing a sort of a trade deal with a television station in Tampa, Florida, and the management called in the owner of the television station, and they introduced him to me, and they said, there's something about you. We'd like to see if we could persuade you to come work for us. And so I was like, I didn't think about it, but that would be interesting. And so at that point, I jumped into broadcast sales, and I immediately into television and radio sales. I started off in Spanish language media at that point, and I worked with Telemundo and with a Spanish.
I was just about to ask what companies.
Yeah.
Was it Telemundo,
Yeah.
Univision?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And so as it progressed, I started working there, and I worked in Spanish media at that point for about 3 years. And then there was an opportunity in what we call a general market, which is mainstream media, to come work for a bigger radio company. And so I made that jump, and it was more mainstream, English language mainstream. I worked for a contemporary hit radio station and an easy listening station. And I also sold sports. So that was my big foray into sports at the time. And I enjoyed it a lot. It was a big career move for me, because they actually promoted me very quickly. Within 4 months, I had a regional position. I guess they realized, I had a lot of background and experience, propelled me forward, and did very well there. The company I was working for, they sold out to a bigger competitor, and I wasn't very keen about working with the bigger competitor. I won't say who they are right now, but I made a decision. I said, I don't know if I want to stay here. So I actually decided to start my own company at the time. And I found that there was a niche, and the niche was that, especially in radio, the Spanish language radio at the time was lagging behind on sophistication and quality and everything else from some of the other mainstream radio broadcast operators. And so we said, okay, that's a niche. So we created a syndication company, and that meant, we would produce radio content and audio content and distribute it to multiple stations around the country. And we started with zero, and I started in my garage. And so
Were you
within,
playing just Spanish music?
it was Spanish music primarily, yes. And when we actually put a countdown together of tropical music, and we got our first sponsor ever. It was sponsored by Coca-Cola, and it aired.
Teach me that,
Yes.
Yoda, because like that.
Coca-Cola.
Yes, and then it ended up being broadcasted in Bulgaria. I'm like,
What?
Bulgaria, but it paid, so it was good. So apparently Latin music had an international appeal. And that company grew over a 5-year span. It grew significantly, was able to, for the first time ever, go to Wall Street, raise money. That was interesting. Very, very educational experience in finances, being a non-finance background person that I was, but I tried to surround myself with people that did understand it. And, I was a quick learner. So I landed my big financing deal, a private equity firm based out of Washington, D.C., Broadcast Capital, Inc. And their specialty was investing in minority-led media companies. And so the gentleman that invested, the principal in that fund, he became my mentor, my second mentor. My dad was my first mentor, and was my second mentor, and sort of helped me to graduate to a different level. He used to say that I was the next Alexander the Great, and he put in all the resources behind me. And so we had a pretty good run over 5 years. We actually went out and bought radio stations. We started building a network of our own and launched a television channel and everything else.
Is this still all in Spanish?
Yes.
Okay, so that is a very,
Yeah.
very unique.
And so at that point, there was a big change in the marketplace, and the market, the media market was being affected heavily by what was going on at the time in the marketplace from a financial standpoint. That's when the real estate market collapsed a few years ago and everything else. And so we knew that media was going to be next. So we immediately began a program to sell all the media properties and everything so I could return my money to the investors. So I consider it my first success and failure at the same time, which I learned a lot from, that you have to fail forward. And so it was interesting because psychologically it was tough. I had put my heart and soul into it. I was the last one to walk out of that office, and it was an empty office, and so it kind of hurt for a little bit. But at that point, I ventured into talent management. That was the most hideous mistake of my life.
So you don't mean like in HR, you mean managing the people that come on shows.
Yes, entertainment talent management. So, and I worked with several celebrities. One of them was a world famous astrologer, television astrologer called Walter Mercado, which, everybody and their grandmothers knew for many years and swore by.
I know who that is. So
Maybe your mom will know.
Yeah.
My mom or my grandparents probably know.
Yes, absolutely. So I worked with him, and by the way, I had known him my whole life, because my dad was his publicist. So it was to me, because they said, you're the next gen, so we need you to. So I did that for a while, but it became so complicated. I felt like I was babysitting most of the time. So that's where that mental health training came into play, because it seemed like I used it a lot, and it was quite interesting. So everybody that knew me said I had graduated from the school of carrying a giant needle and sort of deflating people's egos consistently. So that was a lot of fun. But from there, I actually jumped right back into syndication. A major radio talent had just walked away from their job with a major radio company. And they basically said, look, we know that you're an expert and we need your help. Can you help us? And so literally, I'm like, I had already been sort of burned from the first time around. I said, well, I don't know, but if we're going to do it, we got to do it this way. And I kind of charted out a whole plan, and they followed the plan. And the show started in a very small market and ended up in all the major markets in Los Angeles, New York, and everywhere. It was very, very successful. And then we amplified our offerings at that point, and we built a network where, major companies, major brands would come to me looking to be repurposed into Spanish language or Hispanic targeted media. And so at that point, I was representing CNN, and I built a radio network for CNN that not only covered Spanish language radio in the US, but also throughout Latin America and Europe. So we were in 26 countries. In 18 months, we built a 800 plus radio station network in 26 countries for CNN.
Oh, that's
And then we did the same thing for Fox Deportes, for Fox Sports in Spanish. And then once those things were out and people saw what we were doing, the Associated Press came to us and said, hey, we want to do an experiment. We want to work with you. So we started working with AP News, the Associated Press. And then shortly thereafter came NBC. And by the time we knew it, in a couple of years, we had a pretty big stable of some of the best brands in media and entertainment. And so we built that to a certain degree. And at that point, once again, the market started shifting and changing. And there was this hard talk about streaming versus broadcasting. And that's the surgence of Spotify. And the market was changing very quickly. And at the time, I felt that if we didn't make the necessary changes and adapt it, that we would fail. And so at that point, I bought my partners out. And so I sort of reconstructed a new company that was more focused on technology, which was OI2 Media. And OI2 the whole focus was building technology that would help facilitate content distribution and licensing. So, and that's the precursor to AMCOR, which is the company that I manage now.
So what does AMCOR stand for?
So AMCOR actually is what came as a result of my father's name. So my father is Antonio Miguel. And so my dad was my mentor. And so we actually launched that name shortly after my father passed away. He went through a long battle with cancer. And so to memorialize that, to preserve his legacy, we call it AMCOR.
So core for like corporation.
Corporation, yeah.
Yeah. That's nice because every time you say that name, you think of your dad.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel the same way. My youngest brother is not alive and my mom is not alive, but there are things that when I wear something that they gave me, like these earrings belong to my mom. So when I think of my mom, and same with my brother. So they're always with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Just curious, what kind of cancer? My mother died of leukemia.
So my father started with they call small cell cancer in the prostate, and then it just kind of spread. But it was an arduous battle, and it happened. When it was detected, it was late, and then it just kind of progressed very quickly from there.
Yeah. Well, he apparently has you, and he is smiling upon you. I'm quite sure. So, entertainment industry. I think of entertainment as not just music, of course, but there's also TV shows, and I think that I've seen like a huge shift in what entertainment is. We have, The Voice, and we have America's Got Talent, and then Naked and Afraid. There's been this real desire to look at people from a different way than, on the major networks of how TV originally started. Do you see it continuing to do that? Because everybody is on YouTube wanting to be a star. Everybody is on TikTok wanting to be a star. And
That is correct.
how do you think people get their breaks now?
So it's interesting because that's part of what AMCOR's mission is we've actually sort of deconstructed what media has been and sort of have put it together in a way where we look at media from two perspectives. One from curated professional content, so to speak, and one
like
that is
sitcoms.
Right, scripted and even unscripted as well, documentary style production, but also user generated content is a big component of media going forward. There's no question about it. In fact, some of the products that we will be launching as a company will actually include and engulf the common, consumer of our media to participate in as an extension to our news outlets and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of interactive, it's going to be very immersive in what we do going forward.
So it's sports, it can be documentaries, as you mentioned, it can be a whole lot of things that we're really used to consuming.
Music, all forms of entertainment, really.
Yeah.
So.
So the best part of being in these industries, because it sounds like it's 24/7.
To me,
TV and everything is on 24/7, right?
right. So the best part. So for me, it's a natural passion, because media, I see it as a platform to influence people. I've always said, even when I started my career, that I consider media to be a responsibility. And a lot of times people forget that. But every time that you curate or you distribute a piece of content out there, it's going to impact somebody one way or another. It's either going to influence their opinion, it's going to influence their mood, it's going to steer them to make a decision. There's a lot of responsibility. And at times people forget how serious that responsibility can be, especially when you're reaching widespread audiences.
I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, honestly, because I don't think people are thinking responsibly about it. And I applaud you for even sharing that as a concept for our listeners to mull over. So responsibility comes from, the words that we choose. And how last year it was the deaths of George Floyd and so many others. And there were people that were live streaming things that were going on.
Right.
From whether it was any of those riots that were happening where, it took down a Burger King, I think, in Georgia. And then we also have things where they stormed the Capitol. People are not thinking about that impact and the power of the media.
Every time we put our words out there, they have an impact on somebody. Somebody's going to react to it. And so we have to always be careful how we say it. I am completely against censorship. I believe in the First Amendment right, freedom of speech, and I support that wholeheartedly. But I also believe that there are ways, and then there are ways. And so, we can communicate our opinions, we can editorialize our views, we can do a lot of things like that without, creating hate and havoc or bullying, for that matter. And unfortunately, social media has become sort of a stomping ground for bullying, and it's almost like nobody can say anything. And you have this cancel culture thing as well, which, I don't.
Yeah.
I completely disagree with it. I think it's what it is. It's another form of muting somebody and censoring, because I think if somebody feels a certain way or wants to express something, whether we agree with it or not, it's their right. And so every time I protect that person's right to express themselves, I'm also guaranteeing that my rights are also protected. I agree with them or not. And I'll tell you, I don't agree with a lot of people out there in the public forum, but I'm like, okay, that's your expressed opinion. That's your point of view. I accept it. Thank you very much. This is mine, just so you know. And it's a matter of exchange and understanding. And maybe that's how you build, commonality or bridges of common understanding. But what's happening right now is you have polar opposites, and then you have one side just bashing the other. And that's an unproductive exercise, especially when you have a responsibility in media,
So where do we draw the line, though? That's still the interesting question, because I was watching, I think it was like on 60 Minutes. They had somebody pretty high up in YouTube. This was a year ago. And they were interviewing them and how they had to be constantly monitoring what people are putting out on YouTube. And it can be depressing, because they have people that are sexual predators, they have people that are true racists, and they have goals to really cause disruption in the country. So I feel like there is as you said, a responsibility
Right.
to draw the line in the sand someplace.
Right. So from my point of view, see, I'm exercising my First Amendment. From my point of view, as long as your words are not inciting an action to hurt someone else or cause damage, that's one thing. That's very important. The other side is, as long as we're not using our forums to belittle or start with name calling or bullying whoever your opposing view is, I think those are the two most important items that I would look at, and how you draw the line. I think if you keep within check on that, then you're okay. As long as you're not motivating, creating a mob to go out and destroy
Storm the Capitol.
Storm the Capitol, or run through neighborhoods and burn half the town. I was actually in New York City when the riots were going on, and that was kind of interesting. So
You're talking about the ones from last year, right?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yeah, exactly, about a year ago. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about like in the past, because like I've heard stories of like New York.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about like May of 2020, and
Okay.
so, and the reality is that I understand that people are trying to make a political statement. I understand that there's some disadvantaged groups that are hurt, that are continuously hurting, that need to vocalize their opinion. But once again, there are ways, and then there are ways. And we understand that perhaps some of the ways that have been carried out have not been as effective, but when we take it to those extremes, then, and we're hurting other people, then, that's an issue. So we're violating other people's rights. We're destroying other people's property. We're destroying our nation's capital. Those are things that, we don't want to be doing. We don't want to use our freedom of speech for that. But expressing how we feel, whether somebody agrees to or not, nobody should be afraid to say what they feel, whether they're, black, white, Latino, Asian, gay, straight, whatever it is. They should be able to express themselves in the way that they feel they need to, but as long as they are not inflicting on the rights of others, and they need to be respectful of that. So
I think that when you point that out, so I've actually gone to like different countries, and people don't realize it, how sometimes they kind of overuse their rights here in the US compared to places where I've had conversations with people. They're like, oh, what do you think is happening? I was like, well, I think what's happening is, it's somewhat good, but it's also somewhat bad, because when you go to other countries, you're not allowed to do that. You do that, there's a chance that you'll like get into prison or maybe even executed, who knows. So some people have, I think, like extended those rights, like, okay, you're kind of going too far with this.
my father was Cuban. My father left Cuba when he was 14 years old because his family felt that he would be safer to grow outside of a communist regime. It just so happens that every single one of his peers that were left behind either were executed,
Oh, wow.
or they served 20 plus year sentences in jail from their youth, all because they were expressing themselves. And the way my dad was going even at that age, at that young age, and some of the things that he was doing to cause sort of a revolution over there, he probably would have ended up being executed. So for me, the subject of freedom of speech and not muting people's point of views and opinions and feelings is very close to my heart.
So I'm going to switch to a different topic. Genre of music. What's your favorite one? Because I was thinking it's going to be Spanish, because you spent a lot of your career.
It's funny. I spent most of my career, because almost 70% of the U.S. Hispanic market is Mexican, but I don't really personally listen to Mexican music. I'm familiar with it, but I don't enjoy it as thoroughly. Actually, two genres. So I like rock, and I do like electronic music, so EDM, but the softer kind too. So the music,
Yeah.
why is AMCOR considered the DNA of media?
Oh, yeah, that
And
was
that's
one of
something that
yours.
we missed, yeah.
Yeah. So AMCOR was built on the premise of a technology to be able to sort of level the playing field for anybody that had an inkling to produce and distribute content that does not have access to the same channels of distribution of some of the major financed outlets. So, for example, if you produce a television pilot, your chances of getting that pilot, pushed through and pushed into mainstream media would be, 1,000,000 to 1, so to speak. And so you have to go through what I call the gatekeepers, which is, Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers and Universal. And those are the big gatekeepers, I call them. And not everybody has those opportunities. So the platform that we actually built, the technology we invested in, what it does is it allows individual content producers, whether it's small, medium, or large outfits that are independent, having the same access to all the media outlets and publish to them directly and cut deals with them. And it takes care of everything A to Z, from legal to all the engineering and all the distribution. And so we were very excited about that. And so we feel that, and our DNA model is interesting because the DNA model is a sort of a multicast model. So we believe that today's consumer is actually, consuming media from different channels, different platforms, but it all transpires and goes straight to the direct consumer. And so that's our model, at the epicenter of our model, and that DNA is the direct to consumer play for us as a company. And so we have different access channels to get to that particular individual.
This is more video though, right?
It's a combination of video and audio. So it's both. And for us, it's there's a big convergence between video and audio. In fact, some of the things that we will be doing in the near future, will actually influence both media outlets, both video and audio.
So this is an audio show, but we also play it on YouTube.
Correct.
We're not talking about companies that are small like myself and my own podcast. I think Podbean is who I distribute through.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about those kind of companies, I think, more, right? That's the size of the customer that you would work with?
All kinds of sizes. I mean, we right now we're getting approaches from companies all over the world, because what we're getting ready to do is language agnostic, is geography agnostic. There is no limits. And there's all kinds of companies of all sizes. I mean, we've had small companies that will produce one show, and we have companies that have an entire library of thousands of content offerings that they're looking to place into mainstream media and distribute. Yeah.
The one thing that I would say COVID really taught is that everybody was watching Netflix, and those channels, Netflix, whatever it was, Disney Plus,
Hulu.
Yeah.
They all spiked like overnight, just
Right.
like Zoom did.
Right. And that, and there's been an evolution of how the consumer is digesting media, in these days. There's been a move away from linear, what we call linear media, which is into more of an on-demand model. So the consumer today is like, I like to consume media how I want it,
On my phone,
when I want
on my
it,
tablet.
the way I want it.
Yeah.
And so that, being sensitive to that was key for our business model going forward.
That's very, very interesting. Well, then now we're going to go ahead and take a break. So we will acknowledge our sponsor.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
All right, so we are back to our show. It's all about internships, sharing your internship story and what does the job and the industries look like. Because you know what, Tony, I think schools prepare people for like now, they aren't preparing them for 5 to 10 years from now. So what I think should really be taught is when you're looking at a career, are you going to be a lawyer? If so, what would a lawyer's job be 10 years from now? And I think, again, the thing that we learned from COVID is everything is online. people like to do everything online, and it just accelerated it even more so.
Right.
Whether it was school, consuming, your content, it was yoga classes, it was everything that you could think of, shopping online. So,
Food, shopping, everything.
yeah,
Everything. We don't have to literally move from our spot, and we can have everything we want
yeah,
at the palm of our hands. So
almost everything we want. Because I think that a lot of people came to realize is, yes, we're made for relationship, but when you cannot go and have relationships with people and you're having to stay in place, then all of a sudden, different perspective of what freedom is, because the screen, whatever it is that you're consuming, digesting, as you said, that is your new friend, but it doesn't really fulfill
right,
like people do.
right. So now you're going to see, I anticipate a big explosion in a lot of experiences. I think live events, anything that's interactive, that's immersive, you're going to see a lot of that coming out now.
Mhm.
People may have taken it for granted. Now they won't. So,
Yeah, the ability to go to football games, baseball games, being able to go to a play, a concert, all of those are something that's really important. And you want to be able to sit next to people.
Right.
We complained about it before, but now we're going, oh, let me have that back.
Exactly.
That is really, really good. So, did you manage any interns? What was that like? Because we're going to go back to that future conversation, but we'll finish this one first.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, over the years, I've had various people have worked with us, and what I've done is more than manage, sort of took a role of mentorship and
That's good.
and helping them to understand some of the skills that they should be focusing on based on their areas of proficiency. And having that knowledge of the industry, I was able to help direct some of these people in the right, and put them in the right direction. I've worked with people that this one girl that I knew, she started off as a receptionist at the television station, and by the time I was done with her, she was actually an anchor in one of the major television stations
Oh, wow.
in the marketplace. And so I've had the opportunity to encourage, to help direct, to sort of create a pathway
Mhm.
for some of these people to follow and to develop in their careers.
So I'm going to ask a question for Axel that he doesn't know I'm going to ask. So Axel wants to be an actor. And one of the things that I told him to do is go down to the improv theater here, and they have free classes. And I said, go take a class, see if it's really what you want to do. And he thinks he wants to do that. I think it would be beneficial for him to talk with people that are in that industry, because we were talking with somebody else and they had said, this can take 10 years, 20 years. And if I think about like Ellen DeGeneres and just comedians, Howie Mandel, and it does, before you reach this place, you've put 10, 20 years in there. Axel, is there some question that you would like to ask? Because he's worked with people.
So I was gonna ask, have you ever worked with any actors or people in music?
Well, I said Telemundo, so I'm going to say yes.
And I've actually not worked and grew up around actors my whole life. So I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them develop into major stars over the years and go on to big and better things. So, but what's your question?
My question
Oh,
is, how does he break in? But I don't know what.
oh well, I mean it's funny that you say that, because I'm actually getting like right now what I'm doing, I'm like doing extra work. So like I'm like doing extra. So I've actually been like submitting stuff, and I've been actually getting like answers back. Like today I just got an email of like, hey, we would love for you to be an extra for this. I'm actually gonna be an extra in the next couple of weeks, which I won't be able on the show because I'll be doing that. So I'll be doing that. But as far as like doing like actual like speaking roles, I actually, someone reached out to me about doing a speaking role that I'm gonna audition for at the end of this month actually. So that's something that I haven't done yet. Do like an actual speaking. And I've been looking up like how to like practice it and just get better at it, because there's a short amount of time that you have whenever you try to portray a character. That's something that I've been like looking it up, because I don't have money to take classes yet, which hopefully I will start doing that once I start working within the end of this year or the beginning of next year, start taking acting classes so that I could start getting into speaking roles, because that's something that I want to do.
Do you like
I don't.
memorizing?
Huh?
Do you like
I do
memorizing?
have good memorization.
Because
That's
I
something-
don't, and so that's why I never really busted into acting when I could have and should have. So I'll tell you, there's so many resources now to help, put yourself out there. I mean, there's even websites. I don't know if you ever heard of like Backstage.
Yeah,
You know,
Backstage, Actors Access.
Yeah. So there's a lot of resources like that, but also, even social media, if you write like your own like short skits and things like that, and record yourself and produce it, especially now that as you're in this program,
Mhm.
school, and learning to edit and things like that, you might be able to put together your sort of your own short content and use that also when you're trying to get exposure with these particular roles, because they'll see you in different capacities, and so
Yeah.
think about how you want to be seen as an actor, and use those platforms to be able to showcase your talent. I mean, last year, I guess American Idol, for example, on the music side of things, there was no in-person auditions, so people were basically recording their videos submissions at home, singing guitars or whatever they're doing, and so that's kind of like what I'm talking about. But it doesn't happen overnight, right? A lot of people.
No, of course.
So, and I'll give you a little bit of story, not related to acting per se, but I'm sure you've heard of this great performer called Shakira that last year then the Super Bowl. So I've known Shakira since she was like 16 years old, when she started playing, and performing, and she had her debut album as a teenager. She wrote her own songs, did everything else. She was becoming very famous in like South America, and then started, sort of getting into the Hispanic market in the US, and had her niche. People loved her music. She was really talented, from very young, but she didn't speak English. She had limitations. And so it was interesting because somebody mentored her. I'm sure you've heard of the names Emilio and Gloria Estefan. They were very big in the Hispanic industry and performers as well. They mentored Shakira. In fact, Gloria Estefan personally taught Shakira how to speak English. And so there was this big Latin, it was the Grammys, a big show in the Grammys several years ago. I think it was
2019, 18?
No, actually much further back than that. It was like 2005, I think it was 2004 or 5. And so that's when Shakira made her crossover debut into the Anglo market and started just pumping out music. But it was interesting because when she came on stage, first of all, she changed her look. When she was younger, she had, thick,
black hair.
And then she dyed her hair blonde, and then she had learned English. And then she goes on stage in the Grammys for the first time ever and does this dance with the belly dancing and the whole thing. And everybody's going crazy, going, who is this? She's a new artist. Where did she come from? Brand new. She wasn't brand new. She had been around for a long time, and she built her career up to that point. And that's what we miss sometimes, when, especially in actors and in onstage performers, that people don't give credit for that trajectory and all these sacrifices they had to make over the, a certain period of time to get there. Now, some people get a lucky break. There's no question about it. There is a little bit of luck in there as well. And some people have. But don't discount the fact that, there's a lot of work ethic, a lot of effort over,
It's funny that you say that, because like a lot of the roles that I'm seeing are like non-paid, and a lot of people are not like, they don't want to do it. They're like, oh, it's not paid. But for me, I was like, you know what? Since I don't have any experience, I kind of have to do it to get exposure.
Exactly.
Like, I have to do it. Like, no matter, like, the only good thing is that, one, I get credit for it, which is gonna be on IMBD, and then I'm getting fed. Those are two things that I think are good, because I'm not gonna be paying for the food or whatever meal like that. So I think at the end of the road, I think it will be beneficial for me. I'm just saying that. So I know the sacrifices because I have a cousin that's doing it. So she's told me personally, like, Axel, like, if you really want to do this, like, you're gonna have to make like some sacrifices. And I'm talking about like you're probably gonna work at probably like weird stuff just to like pay bills. It's like, yeah, I know what I'm getting myself into. I wasn't like, oh, let me just do it. Like I've actually like looked into it and stuff like that. And I followed kind of like what she's doing as well throughout her career. So I was like, yeah, I kind of know what I'm getting into.
Well, I'm going to go jump into that future now. Go back. So what do you think the future of media and broadcasting will look like, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? Because we know that we can have in our car alone, we can have music that's FM music from anywhere in the world. I actually don't subscribe to it, but it's Sirius, right?
Sirius XM.
Yeah. So we can have that. But in TV, when I say TV, I'm using the word very loosely. How would we be engaging with it? I think that there will be more ways that we can see if we can make it more virtual reality. And we're participating. We're like in that concert right there. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I went to a concert with Elton John. Best show ever. That man is amazing. The whole band, everybody else took breaks. That's in his entourage, the musicians. He 3 hours did not take a break to walk off the stage for nothing. Anyway, I could see being, instead of just watching it on whatever device I stream from, but can I actually be there and participate? I think it will be something like that. What do you think?
So it just kind of reminds me of a few years ago, I did a presentation in Washington, D.C. in front of a group of government legislators and a lot of people in media. I was invited to be on a panel, and I spoke about what the future of media looked like from that standpoint. And I told everybody that the future would be in the palm of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
You would have all the entertainment that you needed and wanted, and that when you would get home, you would somehow connect your device to your big screen in your home so you can continue consuming it. And everybody looked at me like I was completely insane. They thought I was crazy. And here we are. So I'm going to give you my forecast. I believe that the future of media will be very consumer interactive.
Mhm.
So we're talking about a combination of augmented reality,
Mhm.
a combination of virtual reality intertwined with scripted, content. So instead of just, watching a 2D vision, on the screen, you're going to be,
I'll give you
in-
one. I'll give you one.
yeah,
I Love Lucy. You know that scene where I think it's classic, where she's making the chocolates
mhm.
and then it starts going faster and faster.
Right.
Being in there and trying to, wrap it and do
Right.
all of that. I think that would be it.
So it could be. And so there's going to be a lot of, I think immersive experiences. So for example, I think you're going to see a big surge in gaming as a big component to media going forward. So interactive, opportunities. So if you remember a movie that came out a few years ago called Ready Player One.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think it's going to be a lot like that, where, we're going to have sort of our avatar, and our avatars could look like what we look like right now, or they could be, something else, whatever we want to be on screen. But we'll be able to actually join inside the media from our own point of view. So, maybe, the future of Madden football on the game console is going to be that we're playing right next to Tom Brady and we're throwing the ball, or whatever it is. And so I think that's what's coming next. It's those immersive experiences where we're actually going to be inside the media itself.
I agree.
I was going to take it even further with that of you being in the movie as well. Like
Oh, yeah.
you might be next to, let's say like Tom Hanks or something like that. They're doing the part. I don't know if you've seen this movie called Hardcore Henry is called, where it's like a point of view type of film, and like you're kind of the character you see him running around, And I couldn't watch the whole thing because it kind of made me dizzy. I was like, yeah, I can't watch this anymore. But it could be something like that where like you like could be like, oh, okay, I'm actually a person that this some guy is playing. And it could further open up into like classics as well, like Forrest Gump or like any other movies. I feel like that they could do that with some of the classics as well.
So imagine you're watching Forrest Gump and he sits in the park bench, and then you can actually
Yeah.
sit in the park bench next to him and watch him talk to, whoever's sitting there with him. I think that would be cool.
Yeah,
So
not a hologram, but like really it would feel like it's really that real
Yeah.
person. That would be amazing. I think so. What do you think? I know that we have had previously years back Google Glass and being able to view things, through just simple glasses. But I feel like there's going to be a place where it's going to be obviously wearable, but more so maybe even contacts that we would wear, and we'd be able to see it directly through our eyes that way.
Well, they've already invented that technology.
Really?
So yeah, they have actually.
Yeah.
Actually have Google, I forgot what they call it, but they actually have a technology where it's actually interconnected with
That's
social
Google
media.
Glass.
Yeah, but the actual contacts, you
Oh,
can
the-
actually,
Oh, the contacts you're talking about. Okay.
yeah, they actually have that technology, and it's interconnected, and you'll be able to see,
Everything.
social media handles and everything. It's very, very interactive. I think it's actually kind of crazy to the extreme. But yeah, but even, now there's, for example, there's the technology where you have these full jumpsuits. So you can jump into these VR environments, and actually you can feel, if you're playing, for example, if you're inside a game and you're playing a video game, and you're climbing a rock or something, and you can feel the pressure in your glove.
Wow, that's crazy.
And if you fall, you actually get hurt. You could feel,
Pain.
the pain.
But the impact. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so that technology is actually coming a long way, and I've actually seen some of that already. And so some of that
That
Ready
falls
Player
under
One,
simulation, though.
yes, but that's where it's going. I mean, literally, it's how do we get completely immersed into our media environment, and there'll be a blending of the real world with the virtual world to some degree.
Mm, that would be really interesting. Okay, so something else that pulled up when I was researching this is that podcast hosts are going to become the next set of influencers, because obviously they're out there, just like in news broadcasting, bringing people in, and everyday people. And so it's
Right.
just like what I do now. I've been doing my podcast. This is our 4th season, so 4 years we've been doing.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yay.
One of the things that, and Axel and Elizabeth don't know this, Elizabeth is the other associate producer. She's in California, but she goes to school in Oregon. I was going to let her and Axel do a show without me participating. So I'd be interested in seeing what type of a show that they would put on, where once a year, I let, the interns take over the show, so to speak. And how would this show be different? How would it be better? So I'm throwing that one out there. I bet you're going to go and text Elizabeth as soon as we're done with this show.
Yeah, and
Have fun with it.
I would love to do it before I finish my internship, to be quite honest.
Well, you're going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to. So it better be damn good. And there's
If it's not, then it's
it'll
I
still
am to
go up,
blame
but it's
for.
going to speak to your skills.
Yeah.
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 You want to be really listening to all of this great mentoring advice from this next to me.
She's gonna throw you into the fire.
Yeah. I mean that's how it is in the workforce. Like once you start working, I've heard stories where once you start working, boom, they put you and you're like, what?
Yeah, that word intern gives you a lot of mercy and grace, right?
Yes, yeah.
People go, oh, you're learning. It's okay. And then giving. But you drop that word intern off and it's like, what? Why don't you know this? Why were you late? What's this?
Yes, that's when they drop the training wheels on your bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're becoming the next set of influencers, I think that's there. But it's not just even podcasts. We've seen this happen with, YouTube stars and, everything that's in the gaming. And not only that, they're like 5 years old sometimes.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I'm going,
But
"That's-
it's omni-channel now. I think influencing is omni-channel. Podcasting is certainly one of the fastest growing areas of media right now. It
Mhm.
really is. It's growing very, very fast. But you have the YouTube influencers, you have the Instagrammers, you have TikTokers, there's so many different, channels. And some people have been able to effectively manage all of those platforms. There's some people that actually, like Gary Vee, for example, he's
Oh my
to me is a
God.
perfect example.
He's amazing.
The guy's in my soup, it's everywhere. He's everywhere,
Yeah,
he's in LinkedIn, he's in Instagram, he's in TikTok, he's everywhere.
he's definitely big on Twitter.
And what he's done is he's been able to manage his brand and his content and sort of multicast it. So his same content is everywhere, and they tweak it a little bit to the format. But for the most part, it's the same content, and it's everywhere that you can possibly imagine. And that, makes him a omni-channel influencer, so to speak. So
Yeah, well, that is really, really cool too. So aside from that, mentoring advice, what is the best mentoring advice? And I'm going to guess it's going to be something your father shared that you would like to pass on to our listeners.
don't be afraid.
Mm.
I always say that fear is the antithesis to hope and to faith. Just have faith in yourself. If you have it in you and you feel that you do, don't be afraid. Just do it.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid.
that is a good piece of advice. Yeah, because you can live with regret, maybe not, but the fact that you tried, yes, that is the thing that is always there. And fear will paralyze you.
It could be discouraging sometimes. You may not get the role. You might not get the job. There's a lot of things that may happen, but it's like I mentioned earlier, you have to fail forward. You have to keep moving forward.
That's a book also.
So is it a book? Oh,
Is it a book?
It is a book.
Sounds like a good.
Oh, fail forward.
It is a really, really good book. Yeah. How can our listeners find you? What's your website? Are you on social channels? Because
Yep.
I love the fact of you can tell us how many followers on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I have about 28,000 followers on LinkedIn, mainly media, entertainment, celebrities. And so,
He's pulling up your website
Oh,
for
okay.
you.
Oh,
Yeah,
he
that's
is.
what he's doing.
And then also and AMCORmedia.com as well. But I would say, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. A lot of people approach me all the time and they ask me questions. I've had a lot of people ask me, can you help me mentor me with this, that, and the other? And I've done my best to give them advice. And so, yeah, so LinkedIn is to me is one of my favorites.
It is
especially
mine
for
too.
industry.
It
Yeah.
is mine also, for sure.
I mean, I'm on Instagram and all that stuff, but I, for me, for this particular focus, and LinkedIn always seems to be the one that resonates the best. So-
I like Twitter quite a bit. I picked LinkedIn first and then Twitter, but I think YouTube is third. I don't know. TikTok, not so much. Not so much. Well, I want to tell you, thank you for being a guest on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited and I'm looking forward to other things that we're going to be working together on.
Yes.
That is super good, but
Great
that's
things
that.
coming.
That is great things. Thanks for sharing his website, Axel.
Anytime.
Now you know somebody famous, so I hope you go and connect with them on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, I definitely will.
All right. So I want to thank our associate producers, Axel Aponte, and he's always going, woo, woo, woo.
Yeah.
Hello. To do that. Yeah. Hello, Elizabeth. We have on our video and audio editing team is Steve Neese, our video interns, Raymond Ahmad Khan. And we have Berkeley Walgamot and Mitsari Rosales Vargas. So for any employers out there looking to work with interns, please visit us at internpursuit.tech. Learn how you can get matched with amazing talent. So we're going to say goodbye to everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.